The Montreal Canadiens, a franchise meticulously sculpted for future glory, find themselves at a fascinating juncture. For months, the most fervent off-season discussions have revolved around the perennial quest for another center, a pivotal piece to solidify the forward group. Yet, to truly contend for the ultimate prize, to navigate the treacherous waters of meaningful postseason hockey, a team must evaluate its roster through a different lens than a rebuilding club. Skill, potential, and long-term development remain paramount. But the unforgiving crucible of playoff series invariably exposes weaknesses that can be cleverly masked during the ebb and flow of the regular season. This becomes especially relevant on the defensive core. Montreal, to its credit, possesses some of the most intriguing young offensive talent from the blue line in all of hockey. However, building a championship-caliber defense is rarely about simply collecting 6 players who all perform the same job. No matter how skilled they are, the most effective defensive groups are meticulously crafted tapestries, combining puck movement with physical strength, creative offensive instincts with predictable defensive reliability, and high-risk offensive ability with defenders capable of surviving the most difficult, grinding defensive assignments. This nuanced understanding is precisely why a familiar type of player, a specific defensive archetype, continues to surface in discussions surrounding the Canadiens. The specific name drawing renewed, and perhaps surprising, attention is Brandon Carlo, a towering 6'5" right-shot defenseman. Carlo was recently acquired by the St. Louis Blues from the Toronto Maple Leafs during the 2026 NHL Draft. St. Louis parted with the 73rd and 76th overall selections to secure his services on June 27. Yet, despite this recent transaction, persistent speculation has still connected Montreal to Carlo, driven by the Canadiens' continuing, well-documented search for size, stability, and a reliable presence on the right side of their defensive unit. At first glance, the notion of another trade involving Carlo so soon after his acquisition by the Blues might sound unusual, even illogical, and indeed it is. But in the fluid, ever-changing landscape of the NHL, unusual does not equate to impossible. Roster plans, particularly for teams in transition or those with specific needs, can change with remarkable speed. This is especially true when a player is entering the final season of a contract and when the acquiring team, in this case St. Louis, has its own younger options to evaluate and integrate into the lineup. For Montreal, the compelling reason to investigate a potential Carlo acquisition would have little to do with offense. Let's be unequivocally clear. Carlo is not the defenseman the team acquires because it desires another power play quarterback. He is not going to compete with the likes of Lane Hutson for offensive touches, nor would he be expected to drive significant production from the blue line. And that precisely is the point. The Canadiens already possess an abundance of creators, offensive catalysts who can generate scoring chances from seemingly nothing. What they may desperately need, however, is someone who allows those creators to truly create. Someone who provides a defensive safety net and structural integrity that frees up the offensive defensemen to unleash their full potential. Lane Hutson, for instance, has rapidly developed into one of Montreal's most important players, not just because of his dazzling offensive skill, but because of his innate ability to move the puck, manipulate opposing defenders, and generate offense from situations where most defensemen would simply make the safe, conservative play. The more aggressive and offensively involved a defenseman of Hudson's caliber becomes, the more invaluable a reliable, defensively sound partner can be. A big, experienced right-shot defenseman who possesses an exceptional understanding of positioning, who can consistently handle difficult defensive minutes, and who does not require significant offensive touches to feel impactful, could complement Hudson's profile almost perfectly. Carlo's imposing 6'5" frame immediately stands out. Playoff hockey, the ultimate test of physical and mental fortitude, becomes increasingly demanding around the front of the net. Opponents fight tooth and nail for inside positioning. Forechecks become heavier and more relentless, and defensemen have precious little time and space to retrieve pucks cleanly or make precise breakout passes. Montreal possesses undeniable talent on defense, but management has also been consistently linked to the idea of adding more size and crucial experience on the right side of the defensive unit. Carlo fits that description almost perfectly, a square peg in a square hole. He has spent his entire NHL career being asked to defend, to shut down opposing forwards, to be a physical presence. He possesses invaluable experience in high-pressure environments, having played significant minutes for contending teams. And, crucially, he would arrive in Montreal understanding implicitly that his value is measured differently from a high-scoring offensive defenseman. For a team that already boasts offensive firepower from the blue line in Hudson and Noah Dobson, that clear division of responsibilities, that complementary skill set, could be incredibly attractive and strategically beneficial. There is also an important roster management component that makes Carlo an appealing target. Montreal's management is acutely aware of the need to avoid creating unnecessary obstacles for their highly touted defensive prospects, such as David Reinbacher or other young defensemen, who are attempting to establish themselves in the NHL. The organization has invested heavily in their development, and eventually, those players need legitimate opportunities to prove themselves at the highest level. This makes the length of any veteran acquisitions contract incredibly important. Carlo is currently entering the final year of the 6-year contract he originally signed before arriving in St. Louis. Reports surrounding his acquisition by the Blues explicitly noted that only one season remained on the deal. For Montreal, this could be viewed as a significant advantage rather than a problem. A 1-year veteran, particularly one with Carlo's specific skill set, does not necessarily block a promising prospect for half a decade. Instead, he can provide immediate stability to the roster. He can offer crucial insurance if a younger defenseman is not quite ready for the rigors of the NHL. He can provide invaluable experience and a steady presence during a deep playoff run. And, perhaps most importantly, Montreal can reassess the situation comprehensively after the season concludes, maintaining maximum flexibility for the future. That type of short-term, high-impact flexibility has significant, often underestimated, value. The Canadiens are entering an awkward, yet undeniably exciting, stage of their rebuild. They must continue to diligently develop their young players, while simultaneously recognizing that their established core has earned the right to compete seriously for the Stanley Cup. These two goals, while both desirable, can often conflict. Giving every young defenseman unlimited NHL minutes may maximize individual development opportunities, but it may not necessarily produce the best possible, most competitive playoff lineup. Conversely, loading the roster with too many long-term veterans may improve short-term predictability, but it can create long-term congestion and block the path for future stars. A player on an expiring contract, like Carlo, can provide a crucial bridge between these often competing priorities. The obvious question, of course, is whether St. Louis would even consider moving him so soon after acquiring him. The Blues just traded 2 third-round picks to acquire Carlo, meaning Montreal could not reasonably expect St. Louis to immediately reverse course and part with him without receiving something it genuinely values in return. This fundamentally changes the nature of the conversation. This would not necessarily be a situation where the Canadiens can simply call and obtain a veteran for a disposable late-round selection. St. Louis would need a compelling reason to move him. Perhaps a younger player in the Blues system becomes ready sooner than expected, creating a logjam on their right side. Perhaps the Blues determine that another roster configuration makes more strategic sense for their long-term plans. Or perhaps Montreal offers an asset that St. Louis values more highly than the 2 third-round picks it initially spent. Or, and this remains a very real possibility, nothing changes, and Carlo simply begins the season with the Blues, fulfilling his 1-year commitment. That last possibility may still be the most straightforward and likely outcome. But Kent Hughes' responsibility is not to predict which players will definitely be traded. His responsibility is to diligently identify which players would genuinely improve Montreal and to stay meticulously informed if circumstances change. If an opportunity unexpectedly arises, Carlo unequivocally belongs on that type of list. Another interesting element to consider is Montreal's current situation with Arber Xhekaj. Xhekaj remains one of the organization's most popular players, beloved by the fan base for his physicality, his willingness to drop the gloves, and his unwavering commitment to defending his teammates. However, his role on the blue line has not always been secure, and his offensive game is still developing. With both Xhekaj and Zachary Bolduc currently unsigned, speculation has emerged that either could potentially become part of the sign-and-trade scenario before training camp. If Montreal were to move a physical defenseman like Shakaj and then acquire Carlo, the overall blue line structure and identity would change considerably, potentially adding more defensive reliability and experience. This does not imply that one transaction must necessarily lead to the other. It simply illustrates the complex type of roster puzzle Hughes may be diligently working through. Do the Canadiens want toughness and physicality from a seventh defenseman, or do they need it from someone playing regular top 4 or top 6 minutes? Do they believe Reinbacher is truly ready for a significant NHL role? Do they want another right-handed option to balance the pairings? How much defensive responsibility should be placed on Hudson's partner, allowing him to flourish offensively? These questions are far more meaningful and nuanced than simply asking whether Carlo is better than one player currently on the roster. Championship teams are not built around individual players in isolation. They are built around synergistic combinations. One defenseman can make another better simply because their strengths and weaknesses perfectly complement each other. That is precisely why the potential Hudson-Carlo concept is so intriguing. Hudson could continue his aggressive, puck-moving, offensive-minded game, knowing that Carlo provides a more conservative, defensively responsible presence behind him. Hudson could handle more of the puck movement and offensive zone entries, while Carlo could focus on defending entries, protecting the critical middle of the ice, and dealing with the relentless net front traffic. When one defenseman activates, the other understands his responsibility, creating a seamless, effective partnership. It would be a classic stylistic contrast, a perfect blend of offense and defense. Whether Martin St. Louis would actually deploy them together is impossible to know unless a trade were to happen, but the logical rationale behind the possibility is clear and compelling. There is